is breaking news from DawgNation.
Good afternoon, DawgNation. Welcome into this special Kroger commitment special as we get ready to check in Bogart, Georgia. North Oconee High School just outside of Athens, where four-star edge rusher Khamari Brooks is set to make his college decision, choosing between, we believe, Georgia and Alabama, his final two there. You see the scene at North Oconee High School. An entire cast of folks here from around DawgNation will be weighing in on what we're about to see take place. That means later on we'll get our chance to hear from Connor Riley as we react to all of this. But for now, I want to go on the scene there. North Oconee High School. Our Kaylee Manziel, Jeff Sentell have been on hand preparing for all of this. We see the scene there, chairs in front of the backdrop, microphone in place, but none of the official particulars on hand yet. We'll certainly see Mr. Brooks and his family show up here in a little bit. Our Jeff Sentell, though, is standing by here right now. Jeff, you're there, you're set up, you're ready to go. We'll see Khamari Brooks come up here a little bit later on. Major potential get for whoever gets him, be it Georgia or Alabama. What is the scene like there at North Oconee High School?
Brandon, good afternoon, man. I guess we will call it setting the stage here. If you're looking live right here in Bogart, Georgia with us, the first two rows, those belong to family members of the Khamari Brooks and his family. We've seen grandma. We've seen an auntie, I believe. We've seen his mom. So for those of you guys out there that believe in hat science, we are extending the disciplines this afternoon to cupcake science, auntie science, grandma science, and mom science. They are very vanilla right now in their color choices right now as we watch. Brandon, the simplest way I can say why we're here today is we put out a list each and every week on DawgNation of the top targets we believe in the class of 2026. The number one target, who's been that way for a few weeks now, is Khamari Brooks. You saw him almost making a move, kind of faking out the crowd going to the table right now. But the number one top target that we deem for Georgia in the class of 2026, even though the rankings are a lot higher for other guys, we feel it's Khamari Brooks. We feel that's how important an afternoon decision this is today for DawgNation.
And, of course, after having done several of these commitment announcements recently outside of the state of Georgia, where perhaps the mood in the gym or the auditorium, wherever it took place, would be decidedly neutral, is it safe to say that no matter what decision Brooks makes here today, it is not a neutral crowd? This is obviously a crowd that is hoping for good news for Georgia as North Oconee resides just a couple of miles down the road from the UGA campus. Is that fair to say?
Brandon, I think it's fair to say, you may chuckle as I make this comparison, but I think there's more crimson in your closet, brother, than I think there's crimson in the crowd here today at North Oconee.
Have you seen David Pollock yet? You know, this is one of those things that I think a lot of our audience is aware of, is that David has been involved in this North Oconee program, has a relationship with Khamari Brooks. To give you an idea how deep the ties run between North Oconee High School and the University of Georgia, lots of famous last names have been connected to this program. Any sign or sight of David Pollock yet? I'm assuming someone that would very likely be on hand for this.
Yeah, I'm looking around as you bring that up, Brandon. That is a good point. As of now, we have no David Pollock sightings, but we don't think he's going to make it, although I would wonder if he might roll up in a golf cart really quickly or something like that. But right now, we have no David Pollocks. So potentially the best defensive end in this room is still going to be Khamari Brooks here today.
And let me hit a couple of the other facts here just for a moment, and then we'll let you get settled in for all this on this Kroger Commitment Special today, where Khamari Brooks makes his announcement coming up in less than 10 minutes, we believe. I guess let me start with some of the facts related to kind of largely believed to be down to Georgia versus Alabama. I guess there was a USC official visit that was scheduled, but that visit ultimately was not taken. Is that correct?
Yeah, Brandon, it's pretty interesting. Khamari kind of told me, as you see him moving to the podium with the laptop and the Zoom connection there, Khamari told me he knew he was going to take the official visit to Georgia and then Alabama. And then he's like, even though there's more visits kind of out there in the ether about what he might take, he was honest with me, and he says, I'm not sure I'm going to take any of those right now. I don't feel like we should call them scheduled, because he told me if he saw what he needed to see at either Alabama or Georgia in back-to-back weeks, that he likely wouldn't feel the need to not waste anyone else's time and to keep kind of going through the dog and pony show about seeing USC, just taking those official visits. Brendan, this is very much a very matter-of-fact recruit. Team captain last year. He was a vital cog on the back-to-back North Oconee State basketball champions this past winter. And, of course, everybody knows his football acumen. He led North Oconee. He was one of the key leaders on the North Oconee team that won the state football championship last December inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And, Brandon, here's the really cool wrinkle about all of this. Not only was he an absolute game wrecker from the defensive end position, David Pollock called him one of the most brilliant football players he's ever been around. He also, Brandon, was a impact tight end, Y-type receiver on offense. I believe he caught 36 passes last fall for North Oconee. So you know how Alabama and the Dogs roll? The impact edge that they have prioritized in this class also is a key third down chains mover in the passing game on offense for his high school football team. You add in the basketball stuff there, Brandon. This is a very highly polished athlete with his decision on the line this afternoon.
Of course, North Oconee is a relatively new football power in the state of Georgia, kind of a youngish program. We have seen, though, Georgia win here in the previous recruiting cycle. Landon Roldan, different kind of player, certainly really different side of the ball, although, as you mentioned, Brooks has played some receiver, too, in high school, be an edge rusher for Georgia. But the fact that Georgia did kind of really plant roots very early with Landon Roldan and identified him as a player they wanted, and obviously been kind of a present factor around the North Oconee program since then, how much does that perhaps help with Brooks here today, the fact that Georgia went all the way for a guy like Roldan a year ago, really recognizing something in him and kind of sticking with him through the entire process?
Yeah, it's very interesting, Brendan. Not only did Landon has been one of his best friends for the last few years, Landon is an early enrollee at Georgia right now, so he's been giving him basically a backstage pass into all things Georgia, the workouts, the spring practices, the grind, the day-to-day about being a Bulldog. He also hosted him on his official visit back on the May 30th weekend, Brandon. So he's really been a key inside source to him. I guess we would call it what the young folks say. He's been the plug for him on all things Georgia. One interesting little wrinkle, Brandon, our news hound, Kaylee Mansell, she's pointing out to me right now as we're speaking live that there will be no hats. There will be no hat science beyond this one at all. This might be an unzip of the hoodie only. So there's a little sleight of hand here a little bit. One more thing for DawgNation to know. His step-grandfather, Charles Jr., was a wide receiver on Georgia's 1980 national championship team, and he's not even the biggest DGD in the family. His uncle, I believe it's his great uncle, Horace King, was one of the first 5 African American football players at the University of Georgia. Definitely a pioneer for the SEC and also the black football player at the University of Georgia. So, Brandon, these ties to the University of Georgia, teammate, youth coach, position coach, grandfather, step-grandfather, great-uncle Horace King, there are a lot of ties to the red and black on the line here today.
Jeff Sentell, great stuff. We'll look forward to your coverage, including getting a chance to hear from both you and hopefully Khamari Brooks when this is all said and done in just a couple of minutes. Jeff, we appreciate your time here today.
Brandon, thank you, buddy. Let's wait for it.
It's a Kroger Commitment Special here with DawgNation. Of course, we're live looking in on Bogart, Georgia, and North Oconee High School. Going to hear from Connor Riley, get some thoughts from him in a moment prior to Brooks' announcement coming up in about 5 minutes' time. Let me give a special thank you to our friends at Kroger who make all of this possible today. And, of course, we hope you're enjoying a great summer. That means cookouts with friends. That means pool parties. That means going on vacation. That means plenty of stuff to go on the grill and put in the cooler and all the other things that make Kroger such a special, make summer such a special time of year. year. And of course, Kroger makes it even better for you. We invite you to become a Kroger Boost member to take advantage of all that Kroger has to offer, including more convenience for the things you love and more money to spend on those things as well. When you become a Kroger Boost member, for instance, which you can try, by the way, for free right now for 30 days, you can get free grocery delivery, free grocery pickup. That's added convenience for you. But also, in these days in which saving money any way you can, always important on the stuff that you're already buying at your local Kroger. How about earning twice the fuel points for every dollar spent at Kroger? That's one of the benefits you get as a Kroger Boost member. So check out Kroger.com/boost for more on that today. It is Kroger.com/boost for more on that today. And of course, many of you tuning in to watch us on YouTube here today. We were live last week when Ekene Ogboko, the 4-star offensive lineman, made his pledge to Georgia, and we're providing great Georgia football content, including my show, DawgNation Daily, all throughout the week. So if you want the best that there is when it comes to Georgia on video and the coverage of these dogs, become a DawgNation YouTube subscriber. Simply go to DawgNation on YouTube, click the subscribe button, and you can be notified anytime we're on here talking about Georgia, whether it's one of our great shows, whether it's a commitment announcement, or anything else. You can get that live on the DawgNation YouTube page, including each and every week, Connor Riley getting a chance to be a part, along with Kaylee Mansell of DawgNation at Large. That comes up on Thursday evenings. And of course, Connor joins me here right now. And Connor, let's, I guess, deal with this. As Jeff said, no hats on the table. We saw hats last week be a big part of the fun when it comes to Ekene Ogboko. In this particular case, though, you don't see those hats. You do see the jackets. Excuse me. Pardon me. You see the jacket zipped up. You see the sweatshirt on there. Looks like we may be heading for another one of these kind of T-shirt type reveals that was also, by the way, a part of what Ekene Ogboko did last week. If I had to guess, unless there's something going to fall out of the sky or something like that, it certainly appears that Brooks is going to go the way of the clothing reveal here in a little bit. The sweatshirt and the zipped up jackets would be a little bit of a hint of that. Is that what you would agree with?
I would agree with maybe there's something there under the table that he's waiting to pull out, but it definitely looks like this is going to be a sweater reveal for Khamari Brooks, one of the top outside linebacker / edge prospects in the 2026 recruiting cycle.
I'm reminded here that as Brooks gets ready to make this in the shadow of the University of Georgia, this is one of those things I think that's more possible now for UGA than maybe years ago, where I really think we've seen a real emergence of high school football kind of around the Georgia campus. If you count the 2 Oconee schools as a part of that, I would say that Jefferson is kind of in the Athens footprint, certainly in the shadow of Athens. It seems like high school football in the Athens area has really been on the rise. Obviously, North Oconee, the defending state champs in their classification here in Georgia. So geography today, previous eras, has been a pretty big advantage in recruiting. It seems like Georgia's tried to use geography to its advantage to win with Brooks at the expense of Alabama. And the fact that players like this now live so close to the Georgia campus, Connor, decades ago, I don't know how true this would have been, but it's certainly, whether it be Malachi Starks, players like that in previous years, Brooks here right now, having a little bit of a home field advantage in recruiting is something that Georgia seems to be able to do a little bit more frequently now than perhaps it has in the past.
Right, and I think a lot of people look at Atlanta and they want that to be more of a home turf for Georgia, but because of the transient nature of that city, I just think that's always going to be very difficult. But you look at the way Georgia has recruited outside the metro Atlanta area, especially for blue chip players in this state. They've done a tremendous job of that under Kirby Smart. And you think back to Nick Saban and his time at Alabama. I think one of the undercovered things that Nick Saban really changed, not just about that program in Alabama, but that state, is how much high school football has improved in that spot. And as it looks like we get ready to go here for Khamari Brooks, Kirby Smart having a similar effect in and around the Athens area, I believe.
The ceremony has started there at North Oconee High School, as Connor Riley said. Let's check in on it now here from North Oconee.
Trying to narrow it down and get to this point. But before you commit, I want to recognize everybody and introduce everybody that's sitting at the table with Khamari. Right here to his left is Carla King. This is his mom. To the right of him is his older, not little, or older, not big brother, older brother, Jaden Williams. And then at the end of the table is his grandmother, Elmira King. We're very excited for all four of you and the decision that he's made. But as of now, I'm going to turn it over to Khamari. After Khamari commits, he's going to answer a few questions with On3 recruiting that's on the laptop. So if you can just keep quiet so we can hear them. And then he'll celebrate with his family, and then we'll bring everybody up that's here to ask questions. And he'll do an interview at the end with everybody that wants to ask any questions about his commitment. But after today, he has asked that you respect his privacy and, you know, with his family and friends, as this has been a long process, and he just wants to enjoy the summer and be a student and a kid and prepare for this fall. So after today, if you can please refrain from any interviews as he just wants to spend time with his friends and family. But as of now, I'm turning it over to Khamari. Khamari, let's go, man.
I just want to say I appreciate everybody for being here. You know, I feel like all of y'all have been a part of my journey. If you're here, you know, you made some type of like impact in my life. I just want to first thank I'm thankful for being in this position. Not a lot of people get to go through this, so I feel like me being in this position, you know, I've affected a lot of people's lives that I can see. So I feel like I'm thankful for that also. Love to thank my mom, girl, my brother. You know, without those three, I feel like I wouldn't be where I am today. I feel like they helped me throughout this journey, and they sacrificed a lot for me to get here today. You know, with that being said.
Listen.
Wait, is he not good?
Wait.
Is he not good?
No, we're not live yet. Let me do my thing. We'll be there.
All right, so Khamari Brooks getting ready to make his announcement, and one of the media outlets that's on hand for this has called a timeout here to prevent this from happening, I guess, too soon from their perspective. Interesting that Brooks was ready just to reveal it. We've seen all different kinds of announcements like this recently where, in the case of Jared Curtis, got very quickly to his announcement, very little in the way of delay in that all, not much in the way of fanfare on that. Last week, Eknego Ogboko kind of extended his ceremony, made it a little bit more into some theatrics and a show. If I was reading correctly there with Brooks, it certainly seemed like he wasn't interested much in the way of preamble. There wasn't a very long speech there. That was just simply Brooks about to reveal, as Connor Riley and I had said a moment ago, perhaps pulling off the sweatshirt to see the shirt underneath, which Georgia fans certainly hope is a Georgia shirt. It seemed like that was the way that was about to go. Of course, we also saw from Tyler Arant a little earlier, the North Oconee football coach, saying that today will essentially kind of end the process for Brooks, and he's not planning on taking any more interviews and really not talking about his recruiting process after that. I believe Brooks is now speaking again. Let's go listen in on this. Perhaps he's now getting ready to announce, once again, live from North Oconee High School.
That's really like the way I feel like to take my thing throughout the day, just have a great relationship with the coaches. So I feel like they did a great job with that, and I feel like that's the reason that these two schools have made it this far.
All right, now the floor is yours. Say your thank yous and let us know where you're committing to college.
You know, like I said, everybody in here, you know, kind of been with me throughout this journey. I feel like I appreciate everybody for being here. That shows that the impact I made on a lot of y'all in this room. Love to thank my mom, girl, my brother. You know, without those three, I wouldn't be where I am today. They helped me throughout a lot, sacrificed a lot for me to get here. I feel like with that being said, I'll be committing to University.
How do you like that? Straight to the point. Nothing else needs to be said. Georgia shirts now coming out all around the place. In fact, how about some Khamari Brooks themed Georgia shirts as his family and friends flanked all around him wearing the shirt that says "Committed to the G" with a very cool image of Brooks with the golden spikes. Let's hear now more from him.
Throughout their school, so I feel like, and just the things they do at the school, it's a lot of the same stuff that we do over here in North Oconee. You know, our coaches talk to them a lot, so I feel like that's a big reason that I feel like they're the transfer from here to there is going to be it's going to be a hard process, but it's going to be easier because of the things that we do here.
You had a chance to tell Kirby Smart that you're going to be a dog?
Yes, I did. I told him yesterday.
What was his reaction?
He was excited. You know, he just said I'm going to do a lot of things for them and their program, so that was a really big thing that he said.
All right, well, Georgia fans are going crazy right now in the chat, so when Khamari Brooks arrives in Athens, what type of player can they expect to get?
Just going to get a mature player. Guys should be able to come in and just be mature. I feel like that's the biggest thing. That's really what allows like young guys to get on the field very fast. You come in, you know how to mature, you know, have your manage your time very well. I feel like that's the biggest thing that the school's getting.
All right, well, we're celebrating here in the studio. Got the Georgia helmet out.
Calling himself mature, Khamari Brooks a moment ago, announcing his commitment to the University of Georgia. Certainly, the ceremony itself displays a great deal of maturity. Someone who just, by all appearances, does not appear to be all that into the fanfare of this, not all that interested in the theatrics, just simply wanting to let the world know that those visits that he took to Georgia, so many of those were not for no reason. Those were not to be done in vain, that he was envisioning himself being a part of this Georgia program, and now Khamari Brooks will get that opportunity. Well-deserved hugs coming out now as Khamari Brooks chooses the University of Georgia. We expect to hear more from Khamari here, giving a hug there to his mom. Those Khamari Brooks T-shirts looking incredible. You see the graphic now coming out. The 4-star edge rusher going to Georgia, Tyler Moran, now setting the stage for those questions to be asked. We'll see if we can get a look here at Brooks as he gets ready to speak more. Let's listen in on Khamari Brooks live from North Oconee High School, fresh off a commitment to the University of Georgia. Actually,
okay. Get you to stay and do. All right, man.
All right, we'll get back to that there in a moment. Apparently, they're going to do some photos and some things like that, and then we'll get ready to do that. Khamari Brooks choosing the University of Georgia, highly ranked prospect, number 112 prospect nationally, according to 24/7 Sports, 115th ranked prospect nationally, according to the On3 industry ranking. So you're talking about one of the biggest names in this class of 2026. I'll bring Connor Riley back in on this, and we talked a moment ago about the geographic advantage that perhaps Georgia had, but we also know that Alabama had made a strong push for Brooks, and just because this one essentially takes place in Georgia's backyard, I think that does very little to actually diminish the significance and value of this decision. Brooks emphatically choosing Georgia a moment ago, and certainly this will count as among the bigger wins for Georgia in this 2026 class, Connor.
Yeah, this is just simply a massive win for Georgia in this recruiting class because you look at what they did.
Connor, let me interrupt you. We're taking questions here. We'll get right back to you.
Since they kind of picked up that recruitment after my state championship game, the whole time they expressed that a lot throughout the time they've been recruiting me. The relationship I had with Coach Duribe, he built that relationship on a strong thing. Now we just be able to hang out without it being just football. I feel like that's a big thing. You need to be able to be with your coaches outside of football. I feel like that helps you a lot. So I feel like it's the biggest two things that really helped me make my decision.
Did Landon know? Did you tell him? Was this a surprise for him?
Yeah, I was actually going to watch the game at my friend's house yesterday, and me and Landon was playing golf in the same neighborhood. We passed each other. He said, "He was like, yo, stop real quick," and I told him right there, and he let me know. He was very, very excited to hear that. He texted me actually today.
I know you mentioned you told Kirby Smart yesterday. What was the reaction from him when he found out they finally locked you down?
Well, like I said, he was very excited. I told him and Shu at the same time. We were in a little bit before everybody else, but he was very excited. He was saying that he likes my game, the way I'm very versatile, that a lot of people like to see me. He said that they're going to be using a lot of different ways. It's going to help him out a lot in the defense.
I know you've been thinking about this day for a long time, I'm sure. How did it feel like to make the decision, take the shirt off?
Well, like you said, being able now, I feel like I can have my time to really focus and lock in on my season with my team. I feel like that helps a lot. Getting this out, you don't really have any more questions now. It's not more recruiting now. You're just really locked in because I feel like I'm shut down. I'm locked down with my school. I'm not really the type of guy, flip here, flip there. I'm going to stay down, locked down where I'm supposed to go.
When you were going through the process, Georgia or Alabama, obviously Georgia had the hometown advantage potentially. What were you trying to figure out to help determine, all right, Georgia really is where I want to stay home?
It was a lot closer than me if we really believed. Everybody thought it was Georgia the whole way, but to be honest, at some point it was Bama. I feel like Bama was a great school. They had a great relationship with Coach Rob, and he meant that, but I just feel like Bama's a school that you can't pass up. It's 15 minutes down the road. They recruit how they're recruiting. It's hard to pass up. And the thing that they've done these last couple of years, have two guys that kind of came into the league. That's been a really good thing.
How much of a role will you play as a recruiter in the class? You're very mature. You're a leader. What type of role do you see yourself playing?
Anybody let me know that they think that we could get, I'm going to definitely start hitting them up. Jared Curtis, he kind of helped me out. He been texting me. Like I said, I know a lot of players. So C.J. Wiley been texting, C.J. Allen, Ethan Barber, Landon. So those guys kind of recruited me throughout my process. So I feel like I'm going to definitely be a big recruit in this class because we want to bring in the best class we possibly can.
Georgia just had two guys go in the top 15 at edge this position. Just what does that say for you and your excitement there to learn?
That meant a lot. You see that. They see they're really doing great at the position. That meant a lot with my recruitment too because I see that's kind of at the end goal of anybody. They'll go to the first time making it to the NFL. So that meant a lot in my recruitment because it shows they're really putting guys in the NFL.
Your step-grandfather played for Georgia, the national championship team. Your uncle Horace King was one of the first 5. How proud do you think those guys are today? Do they know? You going to let them know early, or do they find it out right now?
They probably find out right now. My step-grandfather, he passed away, I think, in 2017, not too long ago. But, Horace, he's probably very excited to see that. I feel like I'm carrying on that legacy from those two to keep that Georgia tradition going.
Georgia really didn't push for any other edge rushers, like outside linebackers. Like, you were their guy in the class. How much did you feel that throughout the process, and how much did that dictate your decision a little bit?
Like I said, that meant a lot also. When you're only recruiting one guy, that really shows how much a school believes in you. So that meant a lot in my process, because I feel like they were like the only school that was doing that for me, I would guess you could say, because they were only going for one guy, and the whole time they canceled visits for other guys, to let me come and they wanted me to be the guy since December. That was like their guy.
I wanted to ask about the photo that you took on your official visit. There were all the players, all the coaches. You don't see many photos like that. Did you know at the time that you were thinking it was going to be Georgia? I know you said you didn't really know until after the Bama visit, but did you feel at the time like there was something special going on while you were on that trip?
At the time, you definitely feel there's something special. That's kind of what the OV's meant to do. So I definitely felt something like, oh, okay, that's the love that they're showing. But at that moment, no, I didn't know. I feel like I was going to still take my Bama visit no matter what.
How much of a role did Jared play in it? You mentioned him a little bit. What sort of insight did he give you?
He just said, there's been very something special here. He texted me many different times. Probably texted about 4 or 5 times about it. So, he did a great job, texting me and just letting me know about how special that they're trying to be at Georgia.
How happy were mom and grandma that you're staying, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away from home?
My grandma was probably more excited than my mom was. Hearing me stay on, they kind of like grandma's the one that gets more emotional. My mom kind of not as emotional, but I was going to be emotional. But me staying home and being here 15 minutes down the road, they can come whenever. They're very excited for that.
What's your report card for how Coach Uzo Doribe recruited you? What kind of grade would you give him for how he did his job here?
A+. Great job with what he did. The way that he recruited me, I feel like I could get a lot of players down the line the way that he does it.
How did he treat you as a colleague? How did he let you know that you were the guy he wanted?
Talk was very what am I trying to say, all the time was like a saying. All the talks we had when I went up there, like you said, I've been on campus 20 plus times probably at this time. So every time I come up there, he's like, yeah, come on, man, come watch practice. So I feel like the way that he recruited me at the process, he let me know that I was that guy.
What did you think of his coaching style? Being able to see him so much in practice on the spring.
He's a guy that probably could have left if he kind of wanted to. He probably had other jobs elsewhere. He's that good of a coach. So I feel like showing that, and the way that he coached, he's letting guys know he's yelling at them if they need to yell, but he's also going to encourage you if you do something right.
All right, now that you made the decision, you have it off your shoulders. What's your plan for the summer?
Just lock up with my team. Keep getting better with my team. We're trying to go back-to-back. Obviously, we won state last year, so we're just trying to get back-to-back, lock in, hone in on things that we need to fix, and just keep getting better.
Sounds like you got a lot of reasons. What was the biggest single reason why you chose Georgia today?
Relationships. I take relationships very serious because those are going to be guys you're going to be here for the next 3 to 4 years of your life. So relationships is a big part of my decision.
You're the first one of 4 that Georgia's considering this week. What do you have to tell guys like Jay Lamar, Corey Howard, Kurt Gingrich?
Hey, come on. We're doing something special here. The end goal is to win the national championship when you get to college. Obviously, you want your education, but winning that national championship is a big part of being at the school. So I feel like we keep building this class, we'll have the opportunity to do that. Good. Thank y'all.
Thank you, man.
Really, really good stuff there from Khamari Brooks, the 4-star edge rusher, North Oconee High School, choosing Georgia a moment ago over Alabama at a ceremony there in his school. Connor, I cut you off a little earlier as we see the replay here of what went down just a couple of moments ago. Brooks was no nonsense about all of this. Very short speech, very matter of fact. In fact, he was ready to get it over even a couple of minutes prior to that, was asked to wait. But when it was his turn to go, stood up with as little fanfare, but with absolute resolute certainty, unzipping the jacket, revealing the Georgia shirt, the Power G on full display, the block letters of Georgia written in red. And with that, Khamari Brooks is now a member of this 2026 class, and those around him pulling out their Khamari Brooks-themed shirts, celebrating the fact that, as the shirt said, committing to the G here today. Connor, I almost chuckle when I say this. He seems so much like a Georgia commit, a future signee, just sharp as a tack, super polished, committed to football, really into the game, obviously, very no nonsense, by appearances in the way that he conducted his business in the ceremony, wiser than his years would almost suggest that he would be, more mature than his chronological age, perhaps. Very impressive showing, and I know I cut you off as you were getting ready to kind of describe what this means for Georgia. So after getting a chance to hear from Brooks there, take it anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, one, you get sort of Azeez Ojulari vibes there. And,
Great comparison.
Look, quickness, getting off the ball, that's something that's very important for an edge rusher, and he certainly does that in getting to the commitment there. I think the big thing that I take away from this, and you heard him ask about this and speak about this in some of the questions, he was Georgia's top guy in this class, and it was a guy that I think they couldn't afford to miss out on. You look at what they did in the outside linebacker room a year ago. They land Isaiah Gibson, they land Chase Linton, they land Darren Akinabon. And you look at what the 2027 class looks like in the state of Georgia with KJ Green, DJ Jacobs, and LaDainian Guyton. Those are monster classes sandwiched between this. So Georgia knew it couldn't go out and try and cast a wide net. And the fact that they're able to land their top target at this position, a guy who I think is going to be able to help this program, you just hearing from him, he checks all the boxes, a winning player. He won a state title this past year that matters to Kirby Smart. And in getting Khamari Brooks, I think this is another big win for Jadera Uzo-Doribe. Yeah. He's an assistant coach we don't talk a ton about, but with what he has done on the recruiting trail and being able to land Brooks and to beat out Alabama, a program that wants a player like Brooks, I think speaks to the job that he does. And yes, it was a close-to-home recruitment, but we've seen guys from the state of Georgia ultimately elect to go elsewhere, and that hometown feel doesn't necessarily fit all the players. I think it does with Brooks, but even beyond the location proximity when it comes to Khamari Brooks, I think Georgia did a phenomenal job recruiting him, and that is why he is ultimately a Georgia Bulldog today.
I want to ask you more about Chidera Uzo-Doribe here coming up in a moment, but back in Bogart, Georgia, I believe we also have Tyler Arant standing by speaking about what Brooks brings to the table. Let's hear a little bit from him here right now, the coach of the new Georgia commit.
In talking with him for the last, just 5 minutes, you can tell the maturity, the leader type of level he is. What do you think the University of Georgia is getting out of him?
They're getting a first-class citizen that's going to make a huge impact in the Athens area for a long time. His roots are here. He's very familiar with the area, but I think now everybody's going to get a chance to see who he is as he gets in the spotlight on that stage. And people are going to be really excited about the product that he puts out on the field, but more importantly, the product that he puts out in the community as the first-class kid that he is, and the love that he shows to everybody around him.
Can you speak to kind of how he's handled this whole process? Because it was the beginning of last year where he really started to get some attention because of the high-profile schools. And it happened really quickly for Khamari. So can you speak to his maturity a little bit, how he's been able to handle the whole process?
Yeah, it happened quickly because of his measurables. When people started seeing him his junior year and the way he played his junior year, but he's so mature and has been that way since I've known him. He's different than all the other kids that he's around, in a good way. He knows exactly what he wants, and he's not afraid to speak his mind. So as he was going through the process, he was very open with coaches of, this is what I want. And then when it was time to start eliminating people, he did what is very hard for kids to do. He made phone calls. He sat down face to face with them, and he said, this is where I'm at. These are my top schools. I appreciate you recruiting me. And then moved forward and continued to narrow it down, month after month to where he got to these two and felt really comfortable. And I think he couldn't have picked a better two. The programs and the way these coaches recruited him, this was going to be really hard for him to tell somebody no, because he loves Coach Robinson in Alabama and he loves Coach Doribe, and he's got great relationships with both of those coaches. But he has done everything first class.
Good. Thanks, Coach. Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, really good stuff there. Tyler Arant, the head coach at North Oconee, also mentioning the role that Chidera Uzo-Doribe, the edge rushing outside linebackers coach of Georgia, played in this. And, Connor Raleigh, to bring you back in, that is what you were also talking about a moment ago, too. This was a young coach when hired. I would say that kind of with the sort of fan-facing part of college football, not a super high profile. I do believe there were industry insiders that kind of recognize him as kind of one of these, ambitious, fast risers. And obviously that's what Kirby Smart has kind of plugged this program into plenty of times in the past, kind of borrowing that energy. And to have the kind of impact that apparently Uzo Duribe did on Brooks kind of gives you an idea that, yeah, this is also a coach kind of finding a home on this Georgia staff right now, because it was the repetition of multiple phone calls and then multiple visits, and the fact that, Brooks, and to hear the stories anyway, Brooks and Uzo Duribe end up just being in kind of this sort of constant ongoing conversation. You gotta be good at forging relationships to be able to do that. And it certainly sounds like that's what Chidera Uzo Duribe was able to do in winning this one today, or helping Georgia win this one today when it comes to the 4-star edge rusher Khamari Brooks.
Yeah, I just can't say enough good things about it. I think the way that Uzo Duribe has developed, especially when you consider the fact that that outside linebacker position for Georgia, it hasn't always been the easiest sell because of the way they use them and the way they don't so much pin their ears back and go get the pass rusher and go have big sack seasons. So for Uzo Duribe to develop the way that he has and bring him in, he was on that 2022 coaching staff. Again, this is the guy that replaced Dan Lanning. And while his rise may not be as meteoric as Fran Brown's was at the University of Georgia, the fact that you have seen him continue to stack and win big-time recruiting battles, I think not only shows you why he's at the University of Georgia, but why he has become such a valued piece on this recruiting staff. Because again, this is a guy, when he came to this Georgia staff, he didn't exactly have huge ties to this state. Worked at SMU, was getting ready to work for TCU, or I had that the other way around, but ties to California. He played at Colorado. But you see the job that he has done last cycle, in-state prospects, Isaiah Gibson and Chase Litton. He lands those two guys. This time around, they go out and land Khamari Brooks, one of the top players in the state for this recruiting cycle. The fact that he's able to win these big-time recruiting battles in the state of Georgia, I think continues to show why he is a very, very promising young coach on Georgia's staff.
Hang tight for me for a second, Connor. Let's go back North Oconee High School, where our Jeff Sentell is standing by. Jeff, outstanding job with the coverage there as Khamari Brooks chooses Georgia. And for me, the immediate comparison is the feeling we had, and it remains to be seen if Brooks becomes the same level of player, but we were at Jefferson High School a couple of years ago to see Malachi Starks make his commitment announcement for Georgia. We are up in North Carolina to see Jalen Walker, do that shortly thereafter, choosing UGA in a ceremony. Those moments in which, when you heard the young man speak about why he wanted to come to Georgia, it was sort of an immediate, like on the part of Georgia fans of, boy, this is the kind of guy you want to hitch your wagon to. I think for folks who may not be fully acquainted with who Khamari Brooks was before this ceremony, I think he made for himself a lot of fans here today. Obviously, we know what the reputation is on the field, but in the way in which this ceremony goes down, he's just all business. He didn't want to do a lot of preamble. There was very little in the way of theatrics. We're entertained by that, but we also appreciate when players don't want to do that. Khamari Brooks, it seemed like today, was on a mission. He wanted to tell the world he was going to Georgia, and then he wants to get back to, as his coach Tyler Arant said, enjoying his summer and getting ready for a senior year where North Oconee is going to try to win a state championship again. It feels like a young man who's got everything exactly where it needs to be in terms of priorities. Your experience, how about that, watching all of this go down?
Brandon, I don't think you're overstating the matter by waking up parallels with Jalen Walker. I'd throw Nakobe Dean in there, yeah. Nolan Smith, Malachi Starks. Business is a good way to look at it, Brandon. He could have had a business suit on today. He's all about ball. I listened to that press conference, Brandon, and it was a scrum. And this was a young man, I don't know if you noticed this, but he said, or he had folks say prior to our ceremony, that he was going to give 8 to 10 minutes of his time to the media, and then he wanted to shut down the rest of his summer to focus on his team, to focus on his family. But in those 8 to 10 minutes, Brandon, it was gold, so much to the point that I made mention to Kaylee Mansell here, our DawgNation's Kaylee Mansell. Brandon, I don't think there are many first- or second-year players at Georgia right now that could have handled that sort of media moment with the eloquence and the directness and just a great overall interview the way that Khamari Brooks just did. He told me a couple months ago, he's like, dude, I've got a lot of official visits scheduled. I'm probably only going to need 2. He only needed 2, Brandon. He mentioned Chidera Uzo-Deribe. He mentioned Christian Robinson, the former Dawg, a whole lot in glowing tones. That was the guy that was recruiting him for Alabama. Brandon, he is a guy, I have a staple now from doing this over the years. When I meet young players, when I talk to them and I watch them, I'm like, yeah, he can really play. And Khamari Brooks can really play. Basketball state champion. Brendan, he can play all 5 spots on the floor for a state champion basketball team, a back-to-back state champion basketball team. But that's not what he does. He is an edge rusher. He is a game wrecker. And Brendan, my definition of greatness now is, sure, you can do what you do. You can put out great tape. You can look like an SEC guy. You can look like a future NFL guy. But do you make the rest of the team around you better? When speaking to Coach Tyler Arnott this week, one of the things he told me is Khamari is the engine. He is the tone setter for their entire team. He knows what everybody's doing. Everybody knows what Khamari's doing. He's got his hand on the pulse of his team. And Brandon, if there's anything wrong in the locker room, you remember when our great coach Rick used to say those energy vampires on the bus? Well, Khamari cuts that stuff off at the chase. The one story I absolutely love was when Coach Arnott said he came to him before the state championship game. And Brendan, he was already an all-state player, and he said, you're going to see a different version of Khamari Brooks tonight. Brendan, it was a different version. Not only did he talk the talk, he walked the walk. He elevated his game to the point where Georgia, they liked him, but when they saw him play against a very good Marist team and really take over the state championship game, Georgia elevated him to the top of their board. So, Brandon, him raising his level of play to win the state title, to lead his team to a state title, that was the right thing to do. That was a football guy's thing to do. But it also set the tone with how much the Dawgs were going to chase him in his recruitment. You got all this great stuff, Brandon. We also can share the David Pollock seal of endorsement. He told me last year during the season, he called Khamari Brooks brilliant and one of the most brilliant football players he's ever been around.
Certainly exciting news, and obviously you talk about setting the tone. It could also set the tone for Georgia over the course of the next few days. Corey Howard, the defensive lineman from Valdosta, choosing tomorrow. Jay Lamar, the running back from Colquitt County, choosing on Wednesday. You get into Thursday when Craig Dandridge from Cambridge gets ready to make his decision. Couple of potential names perhaps landing the class on Friday. What does this do when you add this to, what happened with Shadarius Tootle on Sunday? What does this do for the growing momentum now for Georgia's 2026 class with all these other names also set to announce here this week?
I think it's pretty interesting, Brandon. This is the momentum. Brandon, this usually happens around July the 3rd and goes through July the 10th when you and I are usually on vacation and we've pre-written a lot of stories. It seems like everything happens faster in these recruiting cycles now. There's NIL, there's revenue share. But I laughed when Coach Tyler Arnott said he kind of thought it was Bama for a while, but then he noticed all these decisions were lining up for Georgia, and he cross-referenced it to the way that Landon Roldan committed to Georgia last year in kind of a rapid-fire succession of announcements. Mm-hmm. We had fun on social media this morning, Brandon. I got AI to generate a picture of Kirby Smart at the poker table with a bunch of chips and a lot more chips to win. That's exactly what it feels like. Georgia, Brandon, conservative estimate, they're going to get about 5 or 6 commitments in the next 7 or 8 days.
Fair and balanced, though, we also must mention that Georgia did lose a commitment today. It was not a player that I think you said on Friday on DawgNation Daily that you expected an SAB in the class of 2026 for Georgia, but up until today, he was a Georgia commit, at least in name, officially speaking, and now he's going to Miami. That's the part that may be of the surprise, right? After the Miami official visit was allegedly canceled, Vance Spafford, the up until now Georgia wide receiver commit, apparently is going to Miami from out of California. What is the reaction for Spafford now being officially out of the class and apparently going to Miami after foregoing the chance to visit Miami this past weekend?
Yeah, I think, Brandon, it's a good point. I think he'd seen Miami before. I kind of had referenced it in two ways. One, I called it a silent decommitment or a decommitment walking in terms of Vance Spafford. But also, I guess it would be kind of paralleling buying a car over the internet without going into the showroom. I think Miami and Spafford agreed to terms without needing the official visit. Of course, it was getting really hard to schedule anymore because everything is dead right now till the start of the season. So you see, Brandon, the moves Georgia has been making, to me, through my kind of informed, experienced eyes, it feels like Georgia had been operating like Vance Spafford was a decommitment for quite some time now.
Well, there you go. Jeff, how about a final thought from you from Bogart, Georgia, before we say goodbye to you? Once again, outstanding coverage by you and Kaylee Manziel both on the scene there today. How about a final thought from North Oconee High School?
Yeah, I would say Dawgs got a lot better today, Brandon. Georgia had one target for their edge position this year. Of course, they loaded up last year. They had one target to play the edge in this class, in this season, and that was Khamari Brooks. Georgia, Chidera Uzo-Doribe gets their man, and now I think you can check off the edge position for Georgia unless Georgia goes after one of those late blooming seniors, kind of like Chase Linton was a year ago. I think Georgia would be quite happy if only they have Khamari Brooks, K5 as he's known here around North Oconee, in this class and in Chidera's room for the future.
Yeah, you get a look there at the graphic on the screen of kind of what it looks like for these defensive commits for the class of 2026. Outstanding stuff. Jeff, we'll say goodbye to you. Of course, Seven Cloud shutting down his recruitment the other day. Carter Lucky becoming another one of these continued Georgia legacies with his recent Georgia commit. Shadarius Tootle flipping from Auburn to Georgia on Sunday. Khamari Brooks, the big ad here today, going with what has been an incredible haul for defensive backs recently, Justice Fitzpatrick among the rest. And, of course, on the offensive side of the ball, Jared Curtis has been kind of the headliner there, but there are more to come. We talked to Jeff about Vance Spafford no longer in this class. However, Georgia does hold commitments currently from Brady Marchese, Ryan Mosley, and, of course, watching closely to see what Craig Dandridge does on Thursday, and Lincoln Keys as the tight end commit, although perhaps adding another at that position before this cycle comes to an end. Same thing for the offensive line with Malachi Lee set to make his announcement on Friday, and recently adding 2 specialists to this class as well. So Georgia's been very busy when it comes to class of 2026. Connor, let me bring you back in here for some final thoughts with you, starting with what Jeff Sentell mentioned. I think sometimes more so than the star rating or the individual player rating or anything like that, sometimes the most important thing to know is how many different players is a given school recruiting in this particular position. Well, Georgia wasn't really recruiting anybody at the edge spot, as Jeff Sentell says it, other than Khamari Brooks. This was their guy. You hear him speak. It's easy to understand why. Just sort of feels like the kind of prospect Georgia seems to find in every cycle. But if you want to know the ultimate value of Brooks, the fact that he was such a priority for Georgia, they essentially recruited him exclusively. That perhaps says this as much as anything could, correct?
He just checks so many boxes. A state champion, a local product playing for North Oconee High School, a guy that has been to Athens a bunch, an SEC level player. You see that with the interest from Alabama, who did as well as I think you can in trying to pull a player like this away from the University of Georgia. A state champion, and you know he has the right mental makeup, I think, to succeed at the University of Georgia. And so when you check so many of those boxes, it makes it really easy, especially when you have a great edge class in 2025 like Georgia signed and a potential historic one on the horizon in 2027. It makes it very easy to say, hey, we need a guy at this position. We think this guy is an absolute dude. And like, sure, he's ranked the number 112 overall player right now. There could be a quick little rankings change and he could shoot up to being a top 75, top 60 overall player. And the excitement that the natural or casual fan might feel might be greatly over that. But Georgia really, really valued this guy. This is a guy they went to the mat for to beat out Alabama to land him. And they do that on Monday and landing 4-star edge rusher Khamari Brooks.
All right, a couple of other things before we say goodbye here, Connor. First of all, any reaction to you from the Vance Spafford flip? as I said, it's been not really the world's best kept secret that Spafford was likely not to be in this 2026 class for Georgia. I don't know that I thought he was going to Miami after turning down the chance to visit Miami this past weekend. Perhaps, as Jeff Sentell said, maybe he had just seen everything he needed to see, and ultimately he's going to Miami for reasons other than the weather in Coral Gables. So perhaps he did not need to go back. But one way or another, it seems like we've seen writing on the wall for some time that Spafford, despite the fact that he once had fanfare as a part of this class, there's just not been a lot of buzz between Spafford and Georgia as of late.
No, those who have their ears to the ground for Georgia recruiting have sort of known that maybe not specifically Miami, but the idea that he's not going to end up at Georgia has been something that has been circling for a long time. And I would cross-reference that, I think, with the excitement and the engagement in the Craig Dandridge recruitment and really seeing how he performed this spring and getting a chance to show what he can do in front of coaches up there at Cambridge High School. Dandridge sent to announce his commitment on Thursday. I think there's a very good chance where we're potentially back here doing this again and talking about Dandridge in a much more favorable light in what he might ultimately bring to this recruiting class, even with Georgia losing Van Spafford on Monday.
So let me finish with that. You mentioned Dandridge on Thursday. Jay Lamar's out there. We'll also be watching what happens in Valdosta tomorrow night. And then two names on Friday that could also have an impact on Georgia. When you look ahead over the course of the next week, is there one or two things in particular that you are most interested? Perhaps you'll say Dandridge because of what you just said, but is there a name or two that's about to make their announcement that you're most interested in right now?
The most interesting one to me is Malachi Lee, because I think Georgia absolutely needs an offensive tackle and a guy who just has all the physical measurables that he checks the box for, and Lee absolutely does. I think maybe part of the reason I say Lee is because that seems like a recruitment that is very much up in the air. Texas, Michigan battling to land the massive Hawaiian. And so I'll be interested in seeing how that plays out. Yes, Georgia lands Ekene Ogboko a week ago, and if you're able to pair him with Malachi Lee, that's a really strong offensive line class when you factor in the in-state prospects that Georgia has in this recruiting class. I would give a mention here to Jay Lamar as well. I think this dude is going to be a stud at the next level. Plays for Colquitt County. A big-time recruiting battle shaping up between Georgia, Miami, and Clemson. Josh Crawford has Colquitt County ties. If he's able to land Jay Lamar, I think you feel really, really good about what Georgia has done in the running back room in this cycle, so he deserves a mention there. But for me, of the guys that are potentially set to announce this week, Malachi Lee is the one I have my eye on. 7:30 announcement on Friday night. I'm going to be a little busy at that point in time, but I think that is as big of a recruitment that is left, other than obviously I think Tyler Atkinson and Caden Prothro, that is still left out there for Georgia at this point in time.
What is 7:30 Hawaii time? Is that 1:30 p.m. on the island where you'll be announcing from? Is that right?
I think 2:30 p.m. I think they're about 5 hours behind us, so certainly understandable. But hey, Georgia coaches might have something to celebrate on Friday night.
No doubt. Connor, great stuff. Thanks for that. We'll look forward to talking to you tomorrow here on DawgNation Daily. Plenty more on what's next for UGA recruiting. Busy time. Really good insight into the news as it relates to Khamari Brooks here today. Outstanding stuff. Also to all of you who've tuned in to be a part of this with us here today. We certainly appreciate that. As Connor alluded to, it could be a very busy week here around DawgNation, including live coverage of Jay Lamar from Colquitt County, Moultrie, Georgia on Wednesday when he makes his decision on Wednesday afternoon. And then the following day with Craig Dandridge, the receiver from Cambridge High School. We'll be watching that closely. And then for other announcements that are perhaps a little bit outside of our travel area, we'll be also watching those very closely and no doubt reacting as needed to all of that. So we've been seeing official visits unfold for Georgia throughout the month. We knew that would bear fruit in the following weeks after that, and right now we are in the midst of that. So thank you for staying close to DawgNation for all of it. We appreciate Kaylee Manziel, Jeff Sentell there at North Oconee High School. Great job by Jay Black, Cody Chaffins, Kamal, the entire team on the scene here as Khamari Brooks, 4-star edge rusher, reveals the Georgia shirt, makes his pledge to the Dogs known, and it certainly seems, for all intents and purposes, Georgia has gotten itself a good one. Thanks for being a part of this Kroger Commitment Special. We'll see you very soon, right back here on the DawgNation video channels.